Hey everybody, my name is Danielle Gervais. I am a senior mortgage advisor with Province Mortgage Associates, and you are checking out our first of many to come series on different mortgage topics. We're going to be talking about debunking some of the misconceptions in mortgages. We're going to be talking about some great new product offerings that are available. We're really going to give you the nuts and bolts of what's important, and I have Lisa McGregor here, who is the Senior Lender Services Manager for Rhode Island Housing.
Thank you, Danielle.
You're very welcome. So Lisa is a wealth of knowledge. She basically helps us write the Rhode Island housing loans and teaches us through the programs and what's available and what we're able to do. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, the very first installment, is debunking the Recapture Clause. So there's certain programs that have recapture, and I think people have the wrong impression of what the recapture is. So we're going to tell you all the goods and bads and how it works, right?
Sure.
So first let's start with what programs have the recapture in it, right?
There are two programs at Rhode Island Housing that have a recapture clause. The reason why they have a recapture is primarily because of the funding source. So those two programs are funded through mortgage revenue bonds.
Correct, yes.
And so, you know, the acronym for that is MRB. If you ever hear us talk about MRB, that's what it means, mortgage revenue bond. That's the funding source. And with that funding source comes some requirements with the IRS, which is called a recapture clause. And so the two programs that currently have this funding source would be our government first mortgage products for first-time home buyers who are under the household income limits, and then the first homes tax credit program.
Right, and just so we can clarify, the new income limits, because they've just recently changed, right? So
yes.
1 to 2 home buyers or home borrowers, it's $95,948.
That's correct.
And 3+ borrowers is $110,341. So that means you can't make more than that, and it's based on all the members in the household over the age of 18, correct?
Yes. So it doesn't matter who's applying for the loan. They're going to take into consideration anyone 18 years or older and their income who will be residing in that property.
And isn't there something about if they're in college, there's some kind of...
Yeah. So, we do find, some 18-year-olds who are full-time students.
Yeah.
And if you're a full-time student, even if you have a part-time job where you're earning $20,000 a year, the IRS says you only need to count $480 a year for that full-time student. So
that's huge.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get right into the recapture. So we talked about, obviously, what programs have it, right? Yes. So we have the mortgage revenue bond program and the tax credit. Is that the second one? Okay.
Those are the two.
All right.
And, we do have lots of other programs that don't have recapture. So
that's important to know, too, because I think a lot of people think any Rhode Island housing program has this recapture attached to it.
Right.
So now let's just delve into what it is.
Yeah. So a recapture tax basically is something that a borrower will need to pay if they experience three things with their mortgage and their property. So all three things have to be true in order for a recapture to be triggered. The first of them is that you have to be selling your home within the first 9 years. Right. Secondly, you have to be realizing a profit on that sale. Okay? And then thirdly, at the time of the sale, your household income has to exceed what the limit is set by the IRS during that time period.
Right. So if you, for instance, let's just make it simple. You sell your house for a profit, but you're under those income requirements, no recapture.
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
That's correct.
You sell your house 10 years from now, no recapture.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's right. And so I think that's a big misconception because a lot of borrowers feel that it's going to happen as long as they sell within the first 9 years, it's an automatic, and that's just not true. These other two things have to be true.
And then the maximum recapture is 6.25% of the original principal balance of the loan or 50% of the gain on the sale, whichever is less. But that's not for all the 9 years, right? It goes up and peaks at year 5.
That's correct.
And then it goes back down to only 1.25% of that amount in year 9. So in year 1 is a low number too. So
that's right.
I think someone being able to see that would make it them much easier to understand that it's not that big of a deal, right? And I mean, it could potentially be, but in most of these years, the percentage is very low.
That's correct. Yeah. I'll tell you that it's very rare that someone will ever pay recapture when they have one of our mortgages. So Rhode Island Housing actually has it in writing that if a borrower who has a mortgage revenue bonded government first mortgage, we will fully reimburse any recapture that they may have to pay. So, we put that in writing so that borrowers know, hey, even if all of these three things were true and the IRS, and you're subject to a recapture with the IRS, we would go ahead and reimburse you for that. So another misconception is that it's Rhode Island Housing that's recapturing
the money,
those
right.
those funds, and that's not the case. It's an IRS rule because
they gave the money in the
they
first
gave
place.
the money, and so it's their rule, and it would be something that you as the homeowner would indicate when you file your federal tax return.
Right. Yes. So that's a requirement if you're selling and whatnot. So
Right.
so let's take, for instance, because we'll apply it to real life situations. Let's say they took the tax credit,
Yes.
but they didn't write the mortgage through you guys.
Yeah.
So then you wouldn't reimburse them if they got the recapture.
That's correct.
Right.
We're reimbursing for the mortgage if there's a recapture on the mortgage, but not on the tax credit program.
Okay, good to
Yeah.
know. That's
Yeah.
great to know. So that's basically the ins and outs of the recapture. It's not as scary. I mean, I think a lot of people have the misconception that it's 50% of the proceeds
Yeah.
when you sell within the 9 years, right? So if you have someone that's just starting out as a first-time home buyer and they're maybe on the lower scale of income, but their jobs seem to be that they're going to be making a lot more money and they're not going to probably stay in the house for 9 years, then it would be a concern of them. But it's not 50% of
That's
the profits.
correct.
It's this whole scale that we're going to be able to show you exactly how it looks. So maybe that will make everyone understand a little bit better about Rhode Island Housing and the recapture clause.